Today on the Spiritual Badass podcast, we have Jani Clark, and she is a mental and emotional performance coach who specializes in hypnosis, mindfulness, and breathwork. Would you like to give us a little the down and dirty on kind of how you started your spiritual journey, where, I like to say, all of us healers, light workers, leaders, whatever we are calling ourselves, got to where we are, generally not because our life was fucking sunshine and roses. So what brought you to where kind of this place of empowerment and what you're doing now?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Yeah, if all of it was rainbows and sunshine, we wouldn't be as extraordinary as we are because life would be too damn easy and not as much fun. So I started my whole journey through addiction, 10 years plus of addiction when it comes to drugs and alcohol, but mainly my a big issue that is more so at the forefront in the last few years has been codependency. So working on all of that has been just getting sober from all of it. And it's not just sobriety itself. It's just, I use the word recovery in the sense that it's not just recovering from specific substance use and mistreatment. It's the recovery of the full person, the whole person. And so as we grow up, and no matter how pleasant or unpleasant our childhood was, there's always a little bit of something that was out of disorder, and we didn't get the right kind of sustenance that we needed to mature into really healthy adults who didn't struggle in any form of anything, whether that was addiction or something else that we've struggled with. And through the course of the last several years now being in sobriety and in recovery, I use it as, and that's why like this cup is so meaningful to me, like the mental health matters, is because that is it. When we have a healthy mind and we can create a safe haven within, we're able to move mountains, we're able to navigate the challenges that are always going to happen in our life, to being able to see them more as speed bumps along the way rather than a mountain. And so addiction was a huge part of what got me to where I am, but also codependency, really, really tough marriage that I struggled to verbalize exactly what happened back then, more so because he is now really a really good friend of mine. We have a great codependent relationship. So when I go back and revisit the old version of myself, it's a struggle because I don't want to talk negatively about him, because it wasn't just him. I was my part too. And I think that was a huge, how I got here is because I was able to say, it's not just him. It's not just this external world that is beating me up. It is me. And I am part of the problem. I'm the reason that I am and where I am. And that's a hard look in the mirror for a lot of people. We don't want to do that. We don't want to say, oh, it's my fault in some degrees. And not playing victimhood. It's just learning from those experiences and not letting them happen again.
It's such a, I always say that, and sometimes I feel almost harsh when I say it, that your healing is your responsibility. Doesn't matter what has been done to you, how, some things you don't have a choice in, and some things maybe you let play out longer than they should, or whatever the whole gamut is. If you don't take responsibility for your healing, it's only going to be half-assed your entire life, and you'll
Mhm.
never really understand what it's like to release the grips of the shit that has traumatized you, since so personally, I've had anxiety panic from a very, very young age. 2 or 3 is what I for sure remember. Starting having panic attacks. And like Friday, I just had one that I've never, part of it was spirit, part of it was a whole bunch of things that are happening, part of it, and I was like, holy fuck, like I haven't had one,
Mhm.
especially on my spiritual journey, for a really long time. And mostly now, if I have them, it's because of clients or people that I work with. And for this time it was me. So I'm like, okay, where, so I really had to get to the roots of it. Like, okay, so what if worst case scenarios really play out, and really talk yourself down and really figure out, okay, where is this really coming from? Do I need to just sit with it? There's just this whole layer of processes that I go through now of, if something's going on, what do I need to do about it? What's my part in it? What do
Yep.
I personally need to take responsibility for? Is it coming from all angles, and it's really not me? Usually you probably play a small part in whatever's happening in your life. Whether you didn't say no, or you weren't having boundaries, or whatever the circumstance is. But now I have just get to come at these things at a different place of empowerment, kind of like we were talking
Yes.
about,
Mhm.
of yeah, it fucking sucks. Yeah, I created most of the situation. Yes, you know what I mean? But then, okay, so what can I do about it? And it's a whole different lifestyle than kind of living in survival and living in
Yeah.
your head under the sand, kind of.
Hmm.
When you don't know what to do to heal, you just live with your head in the sand because nothing you've worked and nothing you tried worked. And, you know, um, life doesn't just get easier for some fucking reason. I still don't understand why. God, spirit, all the things. I still don't understand why it's not just, the Wizard of Oz yellow brick road path. But um unfortunately, that is not my lot in life. So
That's
how
what
has
you're
that
hearing.
really worked for you? And I mean, what was really your moment of fuck, I need to really change my shit? Like what was it that was just like the final like death blow where you're just like, all right, I gotta.
Oh,
Quick break in from your sponsor. So, Accelerated Intuitive is the amazing, perfect program for you if you are ready for that massive intuitive channeling connection to your abilities and spirit. Just really massive up levels. So, you want to take your clients to the next level. You want to understand past lives. You want to really connect your intuition and your abilities. Accelerated Intuitive is the place for you to be. Please let me know if you have questions about that. We'll schedule a call and we'll see if it is the right program for you. It will take you from really kind of feeling good, but to feeling fucking powerful and amazing in your abilities and what you do, what you have to offer the world. So let's head back to our interview.
well, the final, 'cause I feel like a lot of us have to have multiple rock
Yes.
bottoms and slaps in the face.
I always say, which is the very last rock bottom that you
The last
literally.
one, the last one for sure. That was the end of 2020. So my addictions have always been alcohol and marijuana, and those are the two vices that just life was consumed by for a long time. And so the very, very, very last rock bottom was right before Christmas 2020, and my son and his dad were off visiting family, and it was my Christmas off. So I was kid free and went out to a wine night with a friend at her house and drank basically a whole bottle of wine by myself. Didn't realize it that's actually what happened until I reflected back and drove home that night and then I remember vividly being in that car saying, "This is stupid. What am I doing?" And then it wasn't until the next morning when I had anyone who experiences a wine hangover, those are god awful. Like, at least for me personally, like my whole body, like just completely is rejecting it, have the worst migraine ever, full just yeah, full body was just like, nope, this can't be the reality anymore. And it was the point I was also at that still utilizing marijuana as a way of like coping with hangovers. That was all that I did in college, and it worked really well back then. So I was like, I can do it this time, and it didn't. And it actually like made things worse. So I was like, something's really not right, and I need to make a change. And it was one of those like fall on the ground, collapse. I'm suffering so intensely that this can't be my reality anymore. I can't keep doing this because it was on repeat. It was this pattern that just kept surfacing. And that is the clear rock bottom of let's change my life. I need to get sober. These substances, these things aren't working out for me anymore. They're not giving back in some any sense of the word fun. And just decided that that was the end of it. That I've never looked back. Alcohol I've been free from since then, and dabbled in some other fun like plant medicines, but it's not something that I've ever abused again since then. So that was my rock bottom. The one right before that, when it comes to love and intimacy and the codependency, was a relationship that ended also like right at the beginning of COVID. And he pointed out that I'm addicted to the falling in love process. And that was also like a punch in the solar plexus, or the sacral. And it was
Well, because that's the fun
this.
part of any relationship is the newness. When it wears
Oh
off,
yeah.
it's not so
I
fun
was like,
anymore.
the relationship with long term has always been my biggest struggle. Like, I've always wanted like the quick fixes, and that's what substances were for me, or love was for. That it was just like this quick, get really high, feel the dopamine hit, feel really good, but not work on the long term. And so both of those, like I have to say, like they're very two different forms of addiction that needed that rock bottom or that punch of saying something's not right and you need to look deeper within yourself, which is why recovery in the sense is not just me being sober from things that are harmful to my existence, but just recovery in the sense of looking at all the ways that my soul and my being have fragmented over the years because of making choices from a lack of empowerment, from a lack of self-worth, not feeling enough, all of those things that, stem from childhood, that come from different experiences that we've had, whether they were from caregivers or teachers or bullies on the playground, whatever it was that somehow showed us emotionally, like, this is how I actually am. Like, no one loves me. I'm unlovable, or I'm not good enough. I'm not perfect enough. I'm not all of these things. Then we start making decisions because of those experiences. And that's how people get into situations that are harmful. And then we stay there because we still don't believe that we're deserving or worthy enough of getting out. And until we start having these rock bottom moments, these clarifying moments that say, something else is out there. You might not know what it is, and it's terrifying. It's the final degree of enough is enough. And you like throw your hands down or you pray to your God, whatever it is that gets you to, okay, let's take those next steps. I need a therapist. I need a good freaking cry in the shower to realize something needs to change.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. I in my early 20s, I was hitting the sauce on like a less than let's see, occasional basis, like every single day. So I was getting shit face wasted 6 days a week, and then Sunday was kind of like my recovery day. And I was working full time, and it was semi doable back then. You have a little bit of energy.
Mhm.
But I remember this one time when I drove, I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, it was literally the last time I ever drove drinking.
Mhm.
Nobody that it listens to this is ever going to say they've never drove while drinking. They're lying.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you have to have that moment of what the fuck am I doing? So that was that was definitely the last time I ever drove while drinking. Even now, like if I have one, I wait hours. You know what I mean? I make sure, like, I don't drink hardly ever at all. But I remember sitting in the bar one night and just hearing a voice in my head saying, you have to make a decision. You're going down the road you cannot change. And I was like, what the fuck is that? Like I heard it plain as day, and I didn't work with spirit then. So now I understand it was my spirit team being like, hey, bitch, you better wake the fuck up. Like
Yes.
your shit's going downhill real fast. And
Mhm.
so it just kind of, I just kind of remembered that when you were kind of talking about your story. It was, I didn't know back then what it was, but I definitely pulled back, and I was like, okay, I need to, like, and it wasn't like years and years I had done that, but it was, it was going on a year of some decent partying. And even though I didn't make super questionable decisions, like it still wasn't very healthy for me. So
Mhm.
I definitely, that was one of my rock bottoms. But coming out of that space too, I met my husband, and um we drank a lot on the weekends, but it wasn't like an everyday, so it's more just like a get together thing. And we generally don't have alcohol in the house. You know what I mean? Now,
Yeah.
like kind of the way that I grew up, I just didn't want alcohol in the house. Um, and I don't know, it's just something with the kids, and they don't. I got drunk once in Mexico when we went on vacation, and the kids never let me let it down. They loved being able to go to the bar and get me a drink, and it was free. So I'm like, okay, well, that was like the day, and that was in 2016. They don't let me live it down till today because they thought it was the
Mhm.
best thing they've ever seen in their life. I mean, because they messed with me big time. So
Mhm.
but it's definitely a shift. I remember the first time getting drunk and when I had my daughter, and the next day when you have to take care of a baby, you're like, holy fuck, never again. Like, and it was kind of like the last time that I drank, because I was like, or drank in any type of excess, because it was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
like
I'm
can't
not
do it,
21
so
anymore.
yeah,
Like, my
no,
body does not react the same way, and that was a
no.
very clear.
I think I was 27 when she was a baby, so it's not like I was old, but I definitely still was in my early 20s energy, you know what
I
I mean?
noticed,
So
yeah, body changing by the end of my 20s, like mid to late 20s was when I was like, I am not old. I know that, but like my body's definitely older and it's
the
not
energy
reacting
shift
the
your
same
body
way.
takes in there,
Yeah.
it's just like,
It's really strange.
no, we're not going to do that anymore. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Takes too long to recover. And it's
I
like,
know. Oh my God. But a hangover used to be like half a day. Now it's like 2, and I'm like, am I
yeah,
still drunk, or do I have the flu? I had that like last year, I
yeah.
think. It was ended up being the flu. I was like, that's not normal for me. So,
Mhm.
but so in your journey then, so you started to shift. So you kind of had the realization and, kind of your final take action, rock bottom moment. So then what really got you to the point of finding something that clicked, that started to help you, that really
Mhm.
started to be like, holy fuck, I can start letting go, I can start releasing, I can start, um whatever it is I think I need to do. But what was it that really started to allow you to kind of move through things?
Working with the subconscious, that through hypnosis, theta healing has also been beneficial. Using energy healing modalities such as Reiki, those kind of things were a big, and I started that before I got sober, but a lot of it was really, and I guess like maybe that's what got me to finally say like enough is enough. Like my self worth was increasing by the end enough to be like, hey, these actions are not showing you that you love yourself.
What
And
was the difference in that work when you were kind of using substances versus now? Like, obviously there's going
yeah,
to be a shift. I mean, that's how I started. All of my work was really
yeah,
Reiki and then intuition and
yeah.
meditation, all this stuff. But what did you really notice in your mind, your body, and your soul of kind of not having the substance kind of
Mhm,
lag versus, you know what I mean, kind
mhm.
of just being in
Well,
more of the energetic space?
yeah, my mind is a hell of a lot clearer. I think better. I'm able to
The
focus
weighted
more.
blanket gets pulled
Like,
off, is what
yeah,
I
and I
like
was
to
like,
say.
it's not blurry anymore. Like I can see long distances rather than in before. Like I was still like, I always have this belief that marijuana was that way of like getting me in tune faster, but it actually now in retrospect, it maybe it did in some ways, like it helped me connect to more creativity in different ways, but it also kept me from really truly being in tune with my higher self. I always thought I was, or maybe I saw glimpses of what was possible, but it wasn't until sobriety where I was like, my brain, like my thinking, my ability to do and shift and create and alchemize things. I can do that with so much more ease now. It's quicker. Like just Friday night, I went into a really deep self hypnosis kind of in this way. I went into a trance. It felt like where I was healing these things that were coming up. And I had texted my best friend right before I sat down to meditate. And then when I checked the time afterwards, when I told her, and I was like, oh my God, I just shifted so much. I'm crying, like snot running down my face, like that kind of healing. And there was a 30-minute gap. It felt like I was in there for hours. But I remember like then going back, like, reflecting back on old states of being like that. I couldn't get there as quicker. I didn't go as deep. So that's the difference now is that there is this level of just connectivity within me and my soul that I have without the substances that, yeah, I can see how like doing them periodically or something. I just know I don't have control over myself when it comes to cannabis. Like it's just not something that I can have, and that's okay. That was something like I've had to come to complete acceptance of, that it's not what gives back to me. I can get there through breath work. I can get there through just sitting with myself and being quiet. I can do that with the help of someone else who's supportive in that, in any sort of healing modality like theta healing or Reiki. Those are easier and quicker and more fun in my eyes than it is utilizing something that in to me now has a historical point of harm and dysregulation.
Yeah, it's I kind of think back to like my very first kind of boyfriend, real, technical boyfriend, and he used substances. I don't really know why, what he was kind of, I mean, I know some things, but he used meth crank, and then he would get so high, and then he would use weed to bring him down, and
Mm,
then sometimes he would throw alcohol in there to whatever.
yeah.
And it was just
Such
like,
a
dude,
dysregulation to your nervous system at that point. You're
yeah.
utilizing I remember doing the same thing with Adderall and then smoking weed, not to have, like, the anxiety of what happens when you're on Adderall, to I'm going to bring myself down, but I can still focus. Like I remember utilizing both those substances in college. And I was like, I can easily tap into that. If I ever feel a little frantic in my day and maybe anxious, like that's why just tapping into the breath and why I've become a breathwork facilitator is because sometimes all you need is 5 minutes and you can really calm everything down where you're able to focus and connect deeper and to have that inspiration on the next step. Because when we quiet ourselves down and we're in that stillness with ourselves, we can create so much more from that space. And there's not like it's very authentic in that time period too.
So this just came to me. So do you think that we busy our minds because we're afraid of what we might tell ourselves? We're
Mhm.
afraid of what we might achieve. We're afraid of what we might, you know, be honest with ourselves. You know what I mean? Do you find anything in there about when you kind of avoid yourself, then you don't have to maybe deal with things or whatever all of the things is. I mean, we bury our trauma and live in survival because we don't know how to deal with our trauma. But
Mhm.
you know, do you think I think so many people have a hard time sitting with themselves. Like some
Oh yeah.
people come to me and they're like, well, I can't meditate because I have anxiety. I said, I'm gonna call bullshit because so do I. And panic
Yeah.
and depression and everything in between, and ADHD and everything else. So this is
Yeah.
a choice you're making to not find methods that work for you. If meditation is absolutely not going to work for you, cool. But then you need to try breath work or you need to try something else that is going to calm your mind, you know, and um I think it's just hard for people to take responsibility for their stuff, you know, and it's I've been there a lot. I was 39 before I figured my shit out. So I went, almost what 4 decades with my shit all loosey goosey and not giving a fuck, you know. So I get it, you know, it's not
Mhm.
it's not an easy thing, but how have you come across people when like if you're doing hypnosis and you're kind of doing all of the everything. To me, the more that you mentally heal, the easier it is to connect to spirit, the easier it is to use your healing gifts, the easier it is to grow and develop and do these things. So when you're working with people, what are some common things that you either know they're well a I mean, you probably use your intuition too, so you probably already know they're not in a place to do the work, or how do you kind of no. I mean, do you kind of push away the people that are you just know they're not ready, or do you try to get them to try it anyway? Or, how does that work for you in that process of, it could really be beneficial for them, but you also know they're not fully invested in the process or overcoming what it is that is holding them back, or kind of a combination? Like, do you kind of guide them in a different direction, or what do you really do with people like that?
Mm. Great question. Well, I think I repel people who are just not ready. I just don't really work with them. Like
Yeah.
there's only one example, and it's not that she wasn't ready. She was willing to try, but she had so much armor on in her hypnosis session that she couldn't break open. And I always make this joke, like my main goal in a hypnotherapy session is to get someone to cry, like to ask the right questions intuitively that hit that nerve that allows that breaking open of the heart space, that allows then for deeper transformation. And because I have done as much work as I have within myself, I feel like I can hold those emotions that other people experience within those sessions, that I'm not afraid of them. I don't run the other way, but that takes a lot of work. That comes like you need to do the work internally and become friends with those shadowy aspects of yourself, and
Hmm.
to learn that what I've come to realize is that those internal demons or the shadow parts of us, they're just the scared little child or the pissed off teenager or whatever it is, that they're not actually evil, or they're not
Yeah.
actually the monsters that are under the bed that we grew up being scared of. They're
They're
actually
just trying to
us.
protect you. That was the
Yeah.
version of you that was trying to survive and get
It's
through
so
the
trying to
situation. And
survive. And there was this great TikTok I saw the other day that someone shared with me, and it was this man speaking on whenever like whoever has a dysregulated nervous system and they come across someone, and this I think he was talking mostly about like a parent and a child. When a child's dysregulated and the parents not regulated themselves, when a child acts out or they're sad or they're angry, a lot of the time, and this can go for anyone, so like that other person in front of you is reacting from some sort of experience and their big emotions that come up, when the person is not regulated and they're in front of someone who's dysregulated in that moment, immediately that individual is trying to fix the issue and to make them stop feeling that way. So then their nervous system isn't interrupted anymore. Their well-being isn't interrupted. So it's like they're trying to fix the issue to help themselves rather than, okay, this is coming up for a reason. My child or this person is angry because of XYZ that's going on. And being able to notice in that moment, I can stay regulated. I can stay perfectly fine, not let this interrupt my well-being or my day. And just say, hey, I'm gonna just be here. I'm gonna let you feel your feelings or voice what's on your mind and just allow that. A lot our emotions I see as just their characters. They each have something of value to share with us. Like anger, if we sit quietly with them, anger has something to say. It has a message. And a lot of the time, because it's an umbrella emotion, underneath anger is sadness, is rejection, is abandonment, is avoidance, is all of these other things like procrastination. Like anger is just a really,
The
it
ultimate
looks really
protector.
scary. Yeah, but it's just a protective mechanism of something that's deeper where you've been in pain, because pain is really, really uncomfortable to deal with. Anger is more socially acceptable, so we can express it more. It's viewed differently than if our sadness, like people get really uncomfortable with both emotions, but specifically like when someone's grieving, what do? We try to just be like, oh, I'm sorry, and just like kind of push them away rather
Hmm.
than actually being in that space of like they're releasing, they're letting go, they're learning how to process any sort of loss, whether that's a physical loss or something else. But it's just interesting. The more like I've learned how to regulate my own self, I can hold space for any client that comes in, whatever that big emotion is, and their hysterical crying or their anger, if they have an outburst in session. Sometimes people yell, sometimes they cry hysterically, sometimes they don't do anything. But
Yep.
it's just being able to learn how to be that safe space for people to process.
It is interesting. I'm teaching an accelerated intuitive class now, so I use a combination of like DNA activations. They learn some
Mhm.
Akashic records. We really blast through all of the stuff that's holding them back. And like Friday, like I said, for me was really bad, but the students have been going through a lot. So I, as a facilitator, which you take on,
Mhm.
on for them. So I had to have my spirit team kind of do something a little bit different because they're kind of hitting a space in the where they're at that where it's just really emotional and a lot of stuff is coming up. So
Mhm.
um I'm like, okay, I need to shift how I'm taking on because I don't need to take it on and keep it. I just need to understand where they're at so that I can
Mhm.
help them. So I had to kind of shift my process a little bit and shift how I have spirit kind of do that for me. And but as you're facilitating any type of a healer, light worker, whatever you are, starseed, intuitive, like you have to learn to not keep your clients' emotions, not
Yeah.
keep their
Oh
feelings,
yeah.
not keep whatever they're going through. But I think honestly for me, that was the biggest part of like my anxiety, my panic, my depression really almost diminished. It's never gone. It's never going to be gone. It's a part of who I am. But now it's not an everyday, all day thing. Now it's like rare that it's mine or it's my clients. But energy, understanding energy, protecting my energy from other people, understanding how to clear after a session, get what I
Yeah.
need from them, and then be done. That really changed my life and my anxiety, my panic, the energy
Yeah.
overwhelm, all that shit that I didn't know. Like before I started my spiritual journey, I was going to a cardiologist because I thought I was having a heart attack. Every single night my heart would be out of my
Mm.
chest.
Mm.
Yes, I was overweight, but no, I wore a Holter monitor for 30 days. I did every fucking goddamn cardiologist test that is possible. They're like, you're fine. I'm like, but I'm not. And it was like within a couple of months of doing all those tests and my heartbeat getting really bad when I started my spiritual journey. So maybe it was just a kick up because of what was coming, but it definitely was such a huge lesson for me of I've been doing that my entire life, taking on stuff for people because I help people naturally, as an empath, as a, didn't know how to, um, nobody ever really reciprocated when I needed stuff. So I just started helping other people and I didn't think about myself. So it was just natural for me to counsel and guide and help other people and
Mhm.
get out of them whatever was bothering them easily. Not because I was a gossiper, because I knew something was really wrong with them. How had that process been for you? Um, we all have some aspects of it, but, I think us kind of healers and light workers, intuitives probably get a little bit deeper. So how did that shift for you kind of before you did your spiritual work and now, like, you know what clients you want to work with, the energy, how did that energy shift for you? Like, how did it change things in your life and how you work and how you do things when you kind of realize that, holy fuck, I'm taking on a lot from other people?
Well, great example. What was coming up for me was like this really interesting session. And it was like 2 or 3 sessions with the same individual. She came to me because she was experiencing really severe hip pain and only like 22 years old or less than that, even like just really young, like having this extraordinary hip pain. And she came to me, and in the session, like it wasn't until the second session where, interestingly though, like the hip pain, and this is what I love so much about the subconscious, like where we are, our minds are so powerful. They come up with really, really intense physical issues a lot of the time based off of what's emotionally going down under the surface. And so with her hip pain, the root cause was related to her dad's inability to provide or to be like in that space for her to like let her be a woman and grow up and move forward in her life. And so if anything with like, metaphysically, if you think about the legs, feet, legs, hips, like,
Moving forward,
yeah, it's moving forward in our
taking
life. And so
charge,
having issues
feeling
with
safe
it.
and secure, all of
Exactly. So it
the.
was like interesting that it came
So he was an
down
ultimate
to,
protector, like
yeah, or he
overprotective
was
kind.
the opposite. Like he wasn't protecting her, but he wasn't also letting her grow up and be herself. And like he criticized her a lot growing up and just wasn't allowing for her to have that space. But what's interesting though, like as this is all coming up, and we came to that kind of in the first session, but not as deep as the second one. The second one was when I I woke up the next day. I was just like, my hip hurts really bad. What's happening? So I texted her and I was like, how are you feeling? She's like, I'm good. I'm able to
Like,
do
fuck,
yoga
now I
this
got it.
morning. And I was like, I have just taken this on, because I remember in the session, like visually, like I could see it and feel it leave her body in the session. And then at the moment, like I wasn't really consciously aware that I'm gonna take like this isn't gonna go somewhere else. It's gonna come into me now because I didn't close out the session properly afterwards. And so like when it comes to that, when I ended up, doing what I could, and it was gone the next day. But it was so weird and such an interesting just point of how important it is to have really clear boundaries when you're working energetically and emotionally with individuals, because if we're not careful, we just take on all their stuff. And I remember doing that a lot also as a kid, and
Yeah.
especially in high school, where I would become like really incredibly depressed once in a while, or something was going on. I was like, there's nothing in my life that says like this should be my issue. Like I shouldn't be this sad where I want to hurt myself.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing that's going on. But then I would just tap in, like later on, going back and reflecting on all of that, they were like reflecting also on the time period when I was feeling the worst was when we had someone in my class commit suicide. And it was at that time where I was feeling like really emotionally distraught, like to the point that I wanted to hurt myself too. And I was like, there was nothing. I had good friends. I came home to a nice family. Like I had everything I needed. Why am I feeling this way? And it wasn't until years later when
The
I was
collective
reflecting.
emotion.
Yeah. I was just like taking on people's emotions. And it still happens today where I'm able to notice in the moment. Like I
Yeah.
asked the question, is this mine or someone else's? Like I'll be at the grocery store and all of a sudden I'll get a rush of anger. And I was like, whoa, where did that come from? And I
Yeah.
look around and then I can like energetically feel it's the person that just passed me.
Yeah.
Or, oh, I'm angry because this person, I didn't have the right kind of boundaries and shields up that I typically like to do. And it hasn't happened in a long time, because I think after that session with the girl with the hip issues, that was a very clear, this is honestly, it's one of those, to me, it's one of those things, like our mind's so powerful that we can instantly believe something to be true and never have to return back to making it true every single day. Like at that moment, I said, that's not my reality. I have a very clear protective energy around me. I don't take on other people's issues. Those are not mine. It's not, I can feel, and which makes me so good at what I do. I can intuitively pick up on things, but I don't make it mean anything about myself anymore. And it was in that moment where I made a very clear like almost like written rule in my nervous system that said, this is it. Like your boundary is set. You don't have to ask for this every single day. Do the clearing when you start to feel, certain things. Like I will get like overstimulated. So I'll go take an Epsom salt bath or something, but it is a lot of work. It is a lot of work to help people work through their emotions. But so I'll take the self-care action steps, but it's not something that I feel that disrupts my nervous system anymore, which is
Yeah.
really cool.
It's that awareness, and and even as we develop our gifts more and enhance, as the more you dive into the work that you're doing and in the program that you're launching. I even noticed, because I have 7 people in my program right now, and as their gifts are accelerating, as they're really processing through some major shit, their gifts are shifting rapidly. So I have to make sure that I'm, you know what I mean,
Yep.
facilitating on the level of their acceleration.
Yes.
And it's such a cool thing to witness too, because my favorite thing about working with people is just seeing into their soul and seeing what they're capable of, what's holding them back. Because you can't just say to somebody, hey, you got to heal your shit. Like, who the fuck wants to do that? Nobody wants to do that, but if you can help them enhance and do other things at the same time and release the shit that's holding them back, it's such, like, their whole life can change, and it's hard to express that to people, like, hey, you want to go through all the nastiness of letting your shit go, and then like your life can totally change, but it's if somebody would have told me, hey, you have to let go of all of your trauma and your pain, and then you get the golden egg, and I'm like, fuck that, but the reality is, like, when you find methods that work for you, like meditation really worked for me. And it took me a long time. My ADHD and all the other things took me a long time to learn to meditate and calm my mind enough to let the fuck go and allow spirit to bring me what I needed to release. I just had one intention every time I meditated. Sometimes I had to meditate on the same thing like 20 times to get, what I mean, to really process and do all the stuff. And but it's just a life shifter. One thing I was going to say, that still catches me kind of off guard is car accidents. So like the energy of it, or if they've been hurt or driving by, like sometimes it catches me on accident, because if it happens, unfortunately, I witnessed a lot of fucking weird shit, a lot of accidents, a lot of stuff. So I remember this last one just caught me really, because it must have happened like right before I got there, and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna throw up. Like, as I'm driving, I was like, fuck, I'm gonna be sick, because I just took it on. I was like, fuck, but the line was so busy, and I'm like, fuck, I can't throw up right now, I can't throw up. So I'm like, I'm gonna have to throw up, I'm gonna have to open my door, I'm gonna have to throw up. But now that I understand where it comes from, it's like, okay, are they okay? What do I need to do? Usually I'll just kind of send the angels and ask the angels to be like, okay, you need to like take care of that, because I'm busy. Like, I can't, I'm not facilitating that right now. So how have you been able to just kind of implement everything? I mean, did you just kind of learn a little bit at a time, and then you just kind of figured out how did you get into the empowerment piece? I think is my biggest question.
Yeah, that's a step by step. I was literally just talking to my partner about this morning, realizing like how cool it is, because it was just like 5.5 years ago, roughly, that I was in the deepest of my hell, and it took steps. Right, there was a lot of different steps for the next couple of years of like it was empowering myself in some way, and so like I guess in the very beginning, it was just dealing with my anger that was surfacing. Which at that point, when I was still in the marriage, I had come across Krav Maga, martial arts training that allowed for, like, I didn't realize that I had all of this anger stored inside of my body. And in those classes, and I had a wonderful coach that was very inspirational and motivating that way of, Jani, you're allowed to be angry in this class. You're allowed to show aggression. Show me what's going on. And like, it's like he energetically knew that I was holding on to a lot of bullshit. And so
It's a
with that,
very
like,
energetic practice, isn't it? Like,
oh, it was so
like
powerful.
intuitive, like, kind of
Yeah.
anticipating the movement and whatnot?
Yeah, all of that was really powerful, but then there were classes that were just like physical endurance training classes. And so like we would be like, punching a punching bag or kicking one or whatever. So it was like or punching like with like we had these big bags that we'd have to hold and like practice our punches and our kicks towards someone else. Whatever it was, like it just allowed for like, and there was also the encouragement of like making noise as you did it as well, which was also a release of energy. So I think that was kind of like that would like, reflecting back, that definitely started the path of healing where that opened up like space. And so, there's also this like an analogy I always provide my clients of, imagine that you have a closet full of clothes, but a lot of those clothes are like from 10 years ago, or you no longer fit in them, or they don't fit your vibe of like who you're becoming, whatever it is. The closet's jam-packed of all of those old clothes that just don't serve a purpose anymore. But you want all these new clothes. You want to go shopping. You want a shopping spree, but don't have any place to put them. And so in order to have what you want, you need to take out what's not for you anymore. So you got to like start decluttering. And so I give that analogy in the sense of that's exactly what this work does. However it shows up, whether it's going to a boxing class and working out and releasing through sweat and through that kind of aggression where you're physically, showing up for yourself versus like that was the first kind of stepping stones. And then eventually like I did get separated. I did find my own way of life with single motherhood and everything. And through that, like there was then loneliness that surfaced that I needed to work on. And so by sitting in those spaces of utter loneliness, I started to develop this friendship with myself, started working with my emotions differently. I started listening to my anxiety, to depression, to sadness, whatever it was that was surfacing, hearing messages of these are the next steps. And I started working with like my theta healer at the time. I was working with her actively over one summer. And so then energetically, emotionally, I was dealing with past life issues to previous traumas to whatever it was, letting those surface and clearing them away with the help of someone else who could hold the space for me at the time, that I wasn't able to do it just by myself to um starting going after goals that meant something to me. And so through that, like there was then the self-empowerment too. I have this goal of wanting to become an author. And I finally was able to do that back in 2019. And so then there were just like, that's why it's just stepping stones. Like, and reflecting back again, like conversation I was having with my partner this morning was 5.5 years ago really isn't that long ago. But when I
Mm-mm.
look at where I was 5 years ago and how I wanted to, that was a time period where I honestly had a sincere desire not to be alive anymore. Not from like high school where it was like energy
Yeah.
shifts of other people. Like that was really when I was suffering through myself and with myself. And to be where I am now, where I wake up with a zest for life and I wake up really excited for the things that I get to do and create and who get to be a part, like get to do life with. So there's just stepping stones where it started like inch by inch, day by day, moment by moment, the month and years went by to all of a sudden, I think sobriety was also, I know sobriety also is that impact of taking back the power. Like I had all of these things in my external world that had control over me, and I was allowing to have control over me, to taking those out of my life then allowed me to develop a new relationship with myself and the way that I coped with things, where I didn't get to turn to these substances that automatically made me feel better to, oh, I need to find my own coping skills that work for me. And through that, 2.5 years later, now there's this like, I sincerely believe developing a best friend mentality within me has been the driving force for what I do with my clients is I know what it feels like to be like in that soul gut wrenching feeling of loneliness. I know what it feels like to want to die. I know what it feels like to be stuck in a marriage or a relationship that's harmful and takes everything from you. I know all of that personally too. I also now have all of these tools and remedies and resources that I've used personally that over time allowed me to develop this where I say like my mind is my safe haven. I'm no longer afraid in those sense. Like I mean, fear still arises because I'm doing something new and outside my comfort zone, but it's not something that blocks the path anymore. Where I do feel like I have, and that's where meditation helps me is that it's not so much clearing your mind of thoughts. It's just learning how to not let the thoughts turn into emotions that control your next action steps. It's recognizing in this moment of mindfulness, this is how I feel. This is what's going on. I'm only human. I might make a mistake, but I've also learned from all of these other mistakes that I don't want to do that anymore. And having a clear mind, having a clear path of internally, I'm not afraid of myself anymore. And those parts that I once deemed as my inner demons, they're just glimpses of the fragmented self that just wants to be whole, and that we're already whole, but it just feels like we're separated. So by spending time with those pieces, we can bring them all back together again and allow that innate wholeness to really emerge.
Yeah, it's like you finally get to use yourself at full capacity, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Even the pieces you feel are dark and yucky, they have something to offer
Oh,
because
they always
you can
do.
help a client that is in the dark and yucky space, but you don't have to live in that space anymore, you
Mhm.
know? And I think that's where the power lies is we're no longer trapped in the old versions. I always say it's Aaron 2.0, you know.
Yeah,
I'm no
right.
longer old Aaron. You know, and it's now I have goals and dreams and I've done marketing and design for 24 years. I have degrees, I have whatever, but it's I never really felt like that was like my life purpose, you know what I mean? But now I know helping spiritual leaders develop their gifts and enhance their gifts and what's holding them back to develop their gifts and to connect to spirit in a stronger way. Like I know that's what I'm supposed to be doing, it brings me excitement every day. It brings me like, oh my
Yes.
God, it's so exciting when you watch their eyes light up or you just know it's happening in their soul or their spirit teams are so it's so different. I never dreamed before because it was like I was always just survival and it was always we had what we needed for that day and that was it. There was no excitement, no nothing to look forward to, and now that's not how we have to live our lives, and the kids have shifted over the years. They haven't had to shut their gifts off. My
Mhm.
husband has shifted in his own way differently. I've just had to be kind of frank with some things and be like, hey,
Mhm.
like either shut the fuck up with the negativity or get the fuck out. I said
Yeah.
because I'm when I noted what I noticed when I started to shift and not stay in the negative space, that the negativity was really hard for me to be around. And not like it was a bad hurtful, but it was just kind of like all it was just always constant. I was like, dude,
Yeah.
like we can't. And then I heard the kids one time say, my daughter, she's 18 now, but and my son's 4 years younger than her. So I just remember her saying, well, we can't do that, Ethan, because we're poor. I'm like, okay, we got to stop because we're not poor. We're not poor. We're not broke. We have what we need. And if there's things that we want, we have to just work on that. We just can't have it right now. So it was just a whole shift. It wasn't just a me shift. It was a whole,
Yes.
family
Mhm.
shift,
Mhm.
and
I
putting
found
the
it
kids
quite
hopefully in a better space where they don't have to live until they're 39 just
mhm.
trying to get by. And luckily the kids didn't have to live like I did when I was young, but they have their own things and their own stuff to do, but it's just such a freeing place that you don't have to be stuck in where you came from. Basically your mindset, your body, your soul, your past lives, all the things. You don't have to stay
Yeah.
in that space anymore. Okay, so tell us, what is something you want to leave people with? What do you have going on, and where can people find you?
Mm. Well, you asked this question earlier and I had something, then it poofed away. So what's one thing I can give right now is the ultimate gift that you can ever give yourself is to become your own best friend, to become your own internal parent, to become your own teacher, to become your own all of those things. Because everything, once we shift internally, we that's where we see everything externally shift. And as you were talking about your family as well, that was what was coming up, that when we like, it's amazing when we start to make ourselves a priority, like truly make ourselves number one, which is really hard as a parent. And
Yes.
since that's a
You
female
spending
in
money on
general,
yourself instead of them. You're
right?
you're
Like,
taking
oh,
classes, you're taking time away from them.
yeah,
It's
it
the
feels
mom
like there's
guilt
all
times
this guilt
10,000.
that comes up, but it's also just for women in general, because I hear it even from people who are not moms, where there is this challenge of we have been conditioned and trained in this way of externally, when other people are happy, that's when we're happy, but we have no control over other people. So what we do have control over is our own self. And so by becoming your own best friend, your own parent, your own guardian, all these things that we've looked externally for the love and validation and support, becoming that yourself is how then you can see the shifts and changes in other people. That I've noticed that through breath work, intentionally going in and thinking about a problem and breathing through it, it just almost like it's magically changes on the external world. Same thing with hypnosis. I change an internal belief system of that I am worthy and I am deserving, and thus I start repelling people who don't value me, and they start to fall like flies out of my life. And my life has dramatically changed in the most beautiful and magical, most blessed way possible from that moment of shifting to I'm my own best friend, I'm my own healer, I'm all these things that I can turn internally for. Sometimes I need the extra support. We're built for that, we're wired for that, and that's important to have a support team. But if if you can't look out externally and see who is your support team, then that means you don't love yourself enough, that you need to turn inward and look for the ways that you can show up for yourself and making yourself a priority, your own best friend. That is what I can leave everyone with. So I hope that resonates. Um, as for right now, when it comes to self-empowerment and self-love and making big moves in your life and creating the ideal lifestyle that you truly want, Empower Her is my newest course. Right now we're going through it until June 12th. So it started today. We just did week 1 where we went into the inner child. We are doing we just did a meditation. I have it recorded, and I have another meditation I'm about to record that's another version of going into the inner child. Then there's journaling prompts that I provided. So this week is all about the inner child. Week 2 is all about the inner teen and giving her a voice. Week 2 is being with yourself as your current self and learning different empowerment tools and resources and different meditations, as well as then week 4 is the integration, where we're going to connect to our future self, that next level version that has all the answers, right? When we're able to talk to her, she's already living our best life. What is she doing differently that we're not doing today? So there's integration work, there's all of these different steps. I'm calling this kind of like the mini course for Empower Her, where this is the foundation that we're creating. We're cleaning out cobwebs in the basement, we're cleaning up all of those kind of things, and then laying a really solid foundation. In July is when I'm going to launch the actual like whole course itself. That is the main course that's going to go into a lot more detail and have more lessons involved and more practice activities. But so anyone who enrolls now until the last week of June 12th, they get instant access into the main course that happens in July. So anyone who invests now and does the foundational intro course will gain the access into the main one.
Awesome. And where can people find you?
Through Mama Meta, so MAMAMETTA. You can find me on Facebook through Jani Clark, JAN as in Nancy I, Instagram, TikTok. I also have my Facebook page is mamameta.Jani Clark. So those are the easiest ways to connect.
Awesome. I'm so excited. I'm glad you could be on, and I really I love the work that you're doing, and it's just I love your story, and I love that you kind of chose you, and you chose to kind of put your power into the world to help other people. We generally end up helping the people who are similar to us. So
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
I always ask spirit, why so much? And they're like, because then you can help other people. I'm like, oh, I need a little break. Like, it's okay. Like, you can lessen it a tiny bit. But
Mhm.
otherwise, it's just such a powerful place to that's my favorite part about doing the podcast, is really learning people's stories, where they came from, what they overcame. Because not one person that I've interviewed in 55, 58 episodes has um somebody else been their catalyst. It's always been them. Something they've been through, they've survived, they've whatever it is, they've all chosen themselves, and they've all chosen to find what works and not make excuses anymore, So I love that that's part of your story, and I love that you were on. So people will be able to find you. I will tag you in everything that we do, and then your links will be in the comments below. But I hope everybody has a great week, and we'll talk to you
Thank
later.
you. Thank you